Then when the men and women are young and energetic, that's when they're having a big family and they can take care of a big family because they have energy. And then they grow together. They mature and grow into adults together, and they're more likely to stay together. The reason that dating is gay is because it's sterile. There's something very sterile about dating. Men are using condoms. What's gayer than using a condom? Preventing your virile seed from impregnating a woman, not to sound graphic, but like that's very gay. It's gay for a woman to be on birth control and like denying the creation of life. It's gay for men and women to be not married, but texting each other all day and watching Disney movies and cuddling together and, playing this sort of game throughout college and then into early adulthood. Will they or won't they? Am I going to get married? Maybe. Maybe we'll live together. I think the whole thing is just deeply unserious and just very kind of juvenile and immature. And I think that it, it kind of reflects like a arrested development. It's like a stunted
Hmm.
um, growth and maturity. So I think, I'm not saying that getting married to a woman's gay. I'm saying that all of this nonsense that surrounds modern dating culture is extremely sterile and unserious and very feminine and very gay.
Welcome back. Today's sermon comes from the Church of Perpetual Blue Balls, where heterosexuality is so fragile it collapses if you blink at a woman the wrong way. Our prophet, Nick Fuentes, has discovered a groundbreaking truth. Dating women is gay. Sex without the intent to reproduce is gay. Sex while unmarried is gay. Basically, if you are not a legally binding sperm delivery drone operating under Vatican-approved firmware, congratulations, you are homosexual. By this logic, most straight people are gay, most gay people are gay, and Nick Fuentes is the only man left standing, alone, in a room, shadowboxing his own libido. Let's get into it. Schrodinger's straight man. Nick's worldview is built on a fascinating paradox. Women are supposedly inferior, emotional, irrational, and dangerous, yet interacting with them at all somehow contaminates your masculinity. Dating a woman? Gay. Enjoying her company? Gay. Finding her attractive without immediately attempting conception? Extremely gay. Straightness, according to this framework, is not attraction to women, it is abstinence from them, which raises an awkward question. If avoiding women is the straightest thing a man can do, what exactly are you avoiding them for? Because historically, men who design their entire identity around not touching women do not end up founding dynasties. They end up founding monasteries, secret chat servers, or podcast studios with blackout curtains. Nick's masculinity is not assertive, it is defensive. It is masculinity wrapped in cling film, terrified of contamination by desire. The reproductive panic doctrine. Fuentes argues that sex without intent to have children is gay. Pause. That means married couples using contraception are gay, infertile couples are gay, people too poor, sick, or simply not ready for kids are gay. Your grandparents after menopause? Gay icons. This is not moral philosophy. This is biological illiteracy wearing a suit. Humans have sex for bonding, pleasure, stress relief, intimacy, and connection. If reproduction were the sole point, evolution would not have bothered installing nerve endings with deluxe settings. Sex is not a factory line. It is a social glue. Pretending otherwise does not make you virtuous. It makes you anxious. What Nick is really saying is not sex must create life, and what he is saying is pleasure scares me. Why this keeps spreading online? Ideas like this do not spread because they are logical. They spread because they soothe insecurity. They offer a reason you are single that is not your personality, a way to feel superior without being fulfilled, a framework where rejection becomes righteousness. If women do not want you, it is not because you lack empathy, social skills, or emotional maturity. It is because you are too pure, too straight, too principled. This is cope theology, and the internet loves a cope that sounds intellectual. The quiet tell? Here's the quiet part. No one likes to say out loud. People who are at peace with their sexuality do not obsess over it. They do not redraw the map every 5 minutes. They do not treat desire like a hostile foreign agent. They feel attraction. They make choices. They live with the consequences. Nick's obsession is not about guarding straightness, it is about controlling anxiety. When you hear someone insist that everything is gay, what they are really telling you is that they are terrified of ambiguity. And sex is ambiguity incarnate. Straightness that needs a rulebook isn't strong. If your masculinity requires constant surveillance, legal validation, moral panic, and an ever-shrinking definition of acceptable desire, then it is not masculinity. It is a containment strategy. Straightness does not evaporate because you enjoyed yourself. It does not vanish because you loved someone imperfectly. It does not need a theological security team. And if the only way to be straight is to avoid women, avoid pleasure, avoid intimacy, and avoid vulnerability, then maybe the problem is not everyone else being gay. Maybe the problem is that you have mistaken fear for virtue. Marriage as straightness insurance. According to this doctrine, sex outside marriage is also gay, which implies marriage is not about love, commitment, or partnership. It is a heterosexual force field, a legal condom against homo vibes. Sign the paperwork and boom, you are straight. Miss the paperwork and suddenly your genitals are doing crimes. This turns straightness into a bureaucratic status, not an orientation. Imagine explaining this to someone in real life. Yeah, I'm attracted to women, sleep with women, love women, but unfortunately the government has not stamped my form yet, so I am gay until further notice. This is what happens when purity culture meets identity politics, and they both lose the plot. Masculinity that can't survive contact. Here's the core issue. Nick's version of masculinity cannot survive interaction. Real confidence does not shatter when challenged. Real conviction does not require constant purity tests. Real heterosexuality does not need 20 rules to protect it from accidental queerness. If your straightness depends on avoiding women, suppressing desire, banning pleasure, and constantly proving yourself, that is not masculinity. That is fear with a jawline filter. Straight men who are actually comfortable with themselves do not spend their time redefining sex to avoid it. They live, they date, they mess up, they grow. Nick is not guarding tradition. He is guarding himself from feeling something he cannot control. The incel theology under the hood. Strip away the pseudo-Catholic language and what's left is old-school incel logic with incense on it. Women are tempting, desire is dangerous, pleasure weakens men. Therefore, the only safe masculinity is abstinence plus resentment. This is not sexual ethics. This is erotic self-loathing. The irony is brutal. A man obsessed with proving how straight he is has constructed a worldview where straight sex is almost impossible without spiritual risk. At some point, you have to ask who this system actually serves. Spoiler, it serves men who struggle with desire, rejection, and intimacy, and instead of processing that, turn it into doctrine. Let me be honest about my own life, because apparently we're doing confessionals now. I've only had sex once with the intent to have a child. One time, every other time, purely because it's enjoyable. That's it, no mysticism, no breeding schedule, no holy spreadsheet. And no, I'm not out here treating people like Pokemon cards. I don't sleep around for sport. I don't want hundreds of partners. That's not my lifestyle, and it's not my energy. For me, sex is about pleasure. Mutual pleasure, the kind where both people actually want to be there, actually enjoy themselves, and actually know what they're doing. Sex is fun, it feels good. That's not a moral failure, that's being human. If sex were only about reproduction, I'd simply never have it, ever, because turning intimacy into a compulsory biological task sounds like the fastest way to kill desire stone dead. And that's the difference. Nick doesn't hate sex. He hates desire he can't control. He doesn't hate immorality. He hates freedom. He doesn't hate degeneracy. He hates that other people get to live without asking permission first. So instead of dealing with his own repression, he turns it into ideology. Instead of making peace with himself, he tries to drag everyone else into the same joyless bunker. That's his burden, not ours. But here's the part where I opt out. You don't get to shame the rest of us into sexual puritanism because you're uncomfortable with intimacy. You don't get to redefine straightness until no one is allowed to enjoy themselves anymore. And you definitely don't get to turn your unresolved tension into a moral system and call it virtue. Some of us like sex, some of us like pleasure, some of us like choosing joy without turning it into a theological emergency. If that makes humans gay in Nick Fuentes' world, then his world is broken, not mine. Not right, not left, just real.